Welcome to another episode of Looking Through the Developer's Eyes in Half-Life games. Today I'm looking at Half-Life 2 maps. These maps were ported from the Xbox 360, so I'm expecting to find some weird broken stuff. This one map in particular is the background map for the main menu of Half-Life 2. You see, in Half-Life 2 they don't use a still image or a looping video for the background of their menu screens and pause screens. They actually use a map, a live working map, with NPCs and a 3D environment. Usually when you load up Half-Life, you'd be placed into one of these environments, with your head stuck in one position. In the sky here we can see more of these AI node tracks that we saw in Half-Life Alyx. I think these ones are used for birds and city scanners. On the floor here we can see AI nodes, which are used to direct the AI in which place to walk. In this case they have placed them in the view of the player, but at the same time in a sensible position, over the zebra crossing and along the sidewalk, for example. Now you'll find in Half-Life 2 the engine is a lot weaker and limited compared to the one that runs Half-Life Alyx, so expect a lot less in terms of triggers and such covering the entire environment. Over here I found a strange room full of no-draw textures. No-draw textures are pretty easy to understand. They basically don't draw the textures at all, leaving an invisible wall. This is to increase performance, though it doesn't explain why they left this cafe counter here. Now outside the map I found a strange area. I don't think this has any reason to be here. There aren't any player cameras or player spawn points. It's literally just a part of the apartment complex that you see later in the game. It's very odd. They didn't even place no-draw textures on the exterior of the building. On the side here there is also parts of the playground which you will also see later in the game. A tic-tac-toe toy and a seesaw. I don't know if you Americans call it by that, but hey, the UK is weird, and so are Valve apparently for just leaving this out here. My guess is that this is a test, or maybe just an error with the map since it was ported from the Xbox 360 version of Half-Life. Over here you'll find the Citadel. It's placed in the skybox. Basically the skybox would stretch this model up and then project it over the main map to make the model look a lot larger than what it actually is, without affecting performance. In Half-Life Alyx they also do the same thing, except it isn't in the same map like it is here. Over here you'll find what I think are NPC spawn points. There is also a bird spawn point, which I think is all enabled once the player loads up this map. Now going into the main maps for Half-Life 2, I'm starting from the beginning, where Gordon arrives on the train. Already along the floor you'll find the train track entity which the train will follow along. Then coming to a mess of triggers and player clips. Inside the train you'll find the teleport entity that Gordon is placed down on after the G-Man cutscene has finished. You'll find triggers that activate dialogue between the two citizens. Also player clips that stop the player from glitching through the chairs. Going outside you'll find what seems like an endless amount of triggers and AI nodes along the floor. Also a player spawn point for some odd reason. And it appears that Breen's huge screen here is also broken. A Vortigaunt slave that also seems to have relationships with this Combine. Going outside the map you'll find the first train you get teleported to before being teleported to the main train. This train's purpose is to show G-Man's last few lines with some spooky effects. Coming over here you'll find the original test chamber from Half-Life 1. As nostalgic as this may be, the purpose of this room is to relate to G-Man's dialogue. If you haven't played Half-Life 1, then I suggest you do. This is basically where it all started, and how the Combine got to Earth. You'll find more track entities along the ceiling here, which I think are used to rotate these strange barrel looking things. I thought I'd find an Easter egg on the outside, but there wasn't. But for some reason the elevator that brings up the crystal is almost fully modelled. Going further outside the map you'll find the room where you first see G-Man. He seems to be standing on a rotating platform and appears to also have track entities going around his head. I think this is used to rotate the camera around him. Over here you'll find all the logics that make this cutscene possible. In here you'll find a part of the Citadel which is also used to relate to G-Man's dialogue. Now coming back to the main part of the map, I found a strange room with doors. I'm not sure why this is here since the player cannot reach this area at all. I think this is a replication of the path to Dr. Kleiner's lab. Maybe Valve placed this here so they could get an accurate story path while making the maps. Not really sure. Either way it's pointless being here and it affects performance. It could also be cut content, but who knows. Now continuing onwards you'll find a super interactive soda machine. Through this wall I also found what seems to be cut content. Not really sure why they would leave this hole here. Going through the player clip mesh fence you'll reach some T-posing citizens and Combine. I'm basically Easter egg hunting at this point. There's nothing here. Going through here, you'll usually activate a trigger that would close the door behind you, and then you'd be greeted by a Combine, which is actually Barney. Again, going into the Nova Prospekt departure area, I really expected to find Easter eggs, but all I found is that everything is super bland and empty. I guess this is what I get for doing a Half-Life Alyx map inspection first. Continuing onwards, you'll find Barney, and there's different types of helmets lined up on the wall. A version for when he's taking it off, and a version for when he's got it on. Through here you'll find the Combine and the Citizen. Usually you'd be able to see them through a gap in the door. These two characters would be interacting, but then the Combine would shut the hole in the door. Going onwards more towards the main objective, you'll find a whole bunch of entities and triggers. On the screen here you'll usually would be able to see Dr. Kleiner. Now, going outside the map, you'll actually find Dr. Kleiner. His animation and dialogue will be sent through a live feed projected onto the screen, and where Barney would interact with him. Also, on the other side of the map, you'll find Dr. Breen. This is the same system as Dr. Kleiner, where he's broadcasted live across the map on screens. Pretty crazy. Continuing onwards, you would exit the room, climb a ladder, then jump down into this hole here where you would be met with a loading screen after going through a doorway. So as you can see, Half-Life 2, even though it's very interesting, it's still very bland and empty compared to Half-Life Alyx. However, it's amazing to see Valve's using their old methods, but on a much higher level, with every map in Half-Life Alyx being covered in this stuff. I'm curious to see what Half-Life 1 is like. I wonder if it's even more empty compared to Half-Life 2. If you want me to do more like this, place it down in the comments.